Welcome to the Shizu Akagi and Mary Famal Memorial Webinar Series, Uplifting and Empowering Disabled Leaders Today and Tomorrow, brought to you by Linda K. Akagi and Associates. I'm Aisha Musa, and I'm working with my friend Linda Akagi of Linda K. Akagi and Associates, and our special guest presenter, Sam Branazan. We named the series in memory of our mothers, Linda's mother, Shizu Akagi, and my mother, Mary Famal. We named it in their memory because they refused to institutionalize us at a time when it was the norm. Instead, they refused, and they saw us and treated us as people. They didn't focus on our disabilities. They fought relentlessly to see that we had opportunities, and they accepted nothing less for us and expected nothing less of us to make the most of those opportunities. And finally, today is the 100th anniversary of Mary Famal's birth. And when we were discussing plans for the webinar with our special guest speaker, Sam Branazan, he said he preferred any Wednesday in October after 5 p.m. And when I looked at the calendar, I realized the first Wednesday this October is the 100th anniversary of Mary Famal's birth. And I thought, this is a perfect day for us to start our webinar series, and Linda and Sam agreed. So this is the day that we are honoring our mothers for the work that they did in seeing that we became successful disabled adults. What inspired us? Linda and I have known each other since about 1973. We met as teenagers at an Easter Seals swimming program. And when we got together later in life, when we were both at PSU, we noticed that younger disabled people often have lower expectations of themselves, for themselves, than we did. We originally wanted to do a day-long event at PSU to introduce disabled kids to successful disabled adults. Then the pandemic hit, and we put our idea on hold. Then the pandemic introduced us to Zoom, and we started planning again. Then we got the grant from the Office of Civic and Community Life. So here we are this evening. Welcome. The goals and approach of our webinar are the following. We want to encourage the recognition of potential. We want disabled people to recognize their own potential, and we want their families, coworkers, service providers, and friends also to recognize the potential of disabled people. And by doing that, we also want to raise the expectations of and for disabled people. Once we raise those expectations, one of the other things that needs to be done is to identify and mitigate barriers. And we're approaching it this way because our approach is based on the social model of disability that says we are more disabled by barriers in society than we are by our bodies or our diagnoses. And one of the biggest barriers is the mental barrier of low expectation. What does it mean to be successful? Well, success is hard to define because everyone has their own vision of what it means to be successful. And an individual's notion of success is influenced by personal values and social and cultural influences and can change over the course of their lifetime. And there are different things in different ways that people want to be successful or are successful. You'll see as you hear our stories that we have some very different notions of success, but in general, our success is that we have done things that we wanted to do in life. We've achieved things that we wanted to do in life, and we've succeeded in surviving and thriving in a system that isn't necessarily designed to meet our needs. The social versus the medical model of disability is also very important to understand because the medical model views disability as a feature of the person caused by a disease or trauma or other health condition, while the social model of disability sees disability as a socially created problem, not necessarily an attribute of the individual. So the social model of disability calls on society to make a more accessible environment, a more inclusive environment, and that's what we're stressing here. Another question that's important in the overall scheme of what we're trying to accomplish is the question of dependence, independence, and needs. Is anyone truly independent? What are the things you rely on others for every day? Did you build the car you drive? Did you build the roads you drive on? Did you produce the electricity that comes into your house that you use every day? Chances are you didn't. So you're relying on others for many of the things you need to succeed every day in the world. The difference is non-disabled people's needs are seen as normal, where disabled people's needs are seen as special. And one of the shifts in mentality that we would like to see is that needs become seen as needs, human needs, not normal needs versus special needs. The other question that we want people to keep in mind is the question of assessments, functional assessments versus personal assessments. Disabled people go through many functional assessments throughout their life. Functional assessments assess cognition, communication, sensory abilities, and mobility, and focus on what people can or can't do. Then there's the realm of personal assessments, assessing someone as a person. What are their values, their interests, their likes and dislikes? What motivates them? What are their ambitions and aspirations? What do they want to do? What do they hope to do in life? And we want to encourage disabled people and the non-disabled people in their world to begin to think of people as people first and not as disabled first and people second. The problem of focusing on disability and impairment in the medical model is it lowers beliefs and expectations. People think I can't do that or I shouldn't do that because I'm disabled. And people look at the disabled people in their lives and think they can't or shouldn't do that because of their disability. These expectations are rooted in the belief that someone is limited by their disability. In order to change this thinking, we want to really focus on discovering the potential and ambitions of disabled people in the same way that non-disabled people routinely discover their potential and their ambitions. What do they like to do? Why? What excites them? Why? What makes them happy? Why? Or what makes me happy? Asking it of yourself. What do you like and not like? Whom do you admire? Right? What is it about these people that you admire? How can you be more like the people you admire? These, again, are questions that everyone asks themselves when determining their life's hopes and ambitions. And we want disabled people to focus on those aspects more than on their physical needs. That way, the functional assessment can be used to serve the personal assessment to help people achieve their potential and their ambitions once they've discovered them, so that functional assessments serve in a supporting role for the ambitions and the potential. So what we want to do with this webinar is reframe expectations, beliefs, and assumptions, moving from can I do that to how can I do that? And this will lead to strategies for achieving ambitions and goals. So once people have discovered what they want to achieve, then they can ask the question, what do they need to achieve it from themselves, knowledge, skills, time, and effort, and from others in the form of support, encouragement, the right kind of equipment, and training. These, again, are things that everyone, disabled or non-disabled, need. The question is, do you consider it special needs or do you consider it human needs? And we're asking people to see these as human needs, that disabled people are not so very different than non-disabled people. It's the mentality of needs being special rather than normal. And that's what we want to work on in our thinking process. Now, I will introduce you to Linda Akagi.
Linda Akagi, Bachelor of Science. My life. The day I was born. The doctor put me on the table. He told my mom I was dead. My mom said, "Get her alive." I was dead for 5 minutes. Then I came back.
My family is like every family. They don't care about my disability because they know I can do everything, but in a different way. I taught my family how to get around Portland without any special equipment, like ramps. They'd hold my hands as I walked. I was expected to do chores just like my brothers. I helped with house cleaning, cooking, laundry, and everything around the house. We would go to the beach together. We'd take boat rides to get to the beachside. I didn't use letterboards or AAC with my family, we just talked. Back then, I didn't know of any tools to help me communicate. Here are my insights for families of kids with disabilities. Don't underestimate people. Don't give up. Don't say no to everything. If you're overprotective, your kids might miss out on a lot of life. You don't know how much a person can do. Teach someone the will to learn. Treat your children like normal kids. If you don't teach him or her the right way, they won't get it. They will feel bad in the outside world. It's not just their education, it's their whole life. Help your children feel good about themselves. Tell them they are doing a good job. Everyone needs a job. Don't mess with me, I will give you hell. 3 important quotes are in the red. 2. Don't give up. 4. You don't know how much a person can do. 8. Help your children feel good about themselves. Tell them they are doing a good job. That is important for everyone.
Help your children feel good about themselves. Tell them they are doing a good job. Don't give up. If you give up, you miss out on the things you want in life.
Holiday Center was a school for kids with disabilities. I went there from ages 5 to 15. I liked the staff, they were good teachers. I had to walk all over the place with my crutches. Walking was hard, but I liked the challenge. It's a good feeling. Physical movement. I had a challenge with learning how to walk. I had to wear high hip braces, which weighed 40 pounds. I couldn't walk fast enough to get to class on time, but I was determined to walk. Even though it was difficult, I didn't complain because I liked to be at school. I wore the braces for a year, but then I decided I wanted crutches and regular shoes instead. The crutches were better, they were more comfortable and helped me walk. I still didn't get to class on time. Fighting for education. When I was ready to graduate from Holiday Center, the teachers told me I shouldn't go to high school. They said I would get teased. I had a home teacher for 2 years, but knew it wasn't right. I wanted to go to high school, so that I could get a diploma and go to college. I got lawyers who helped me get into Portland public schools. I enrolled in Madison High at 18. Even though I was older than the other students, it was what I wanted. Everyone at school accepted me. When I was a junior, I was awarded Handicap Person of the Year by the state of Oregon as recognition for my hard work and involvement in the school. Prom was really important to me because I was with my classmates. I went to regular classes in high school and it was so important to me. I got to do all the things like my peers were doing at the time. Art is my passion. It is a way to have fun with my family and my friends. I went to many art and craft programs with my family. It makes us happy to share art with other people. Art makes my life happy. I have been doing physical therapy since I was 6 weeks old. I work hard at PT so I can do the things I want to do. You don't know how much a person can do. My parents helped me go to PCC. My mom asked me to get lower classes before I moved to PSU. My parents encouraged me. They said you can do this on your own. I went to PCC for 1 year and got my associates in computer programming. At PCC, I had 2 teachers who had disabilities. One of them taught the computer programming class, and the other taught math. I would like to be a teacher and help others like myself. Having teachers with disabilities showed me I could do it too. It made me feel good. It opened my eyes that I could do anything I want because we are not that different, we have different abilities. I made a lot of friends at PSU. They were like a second family. We'd sit in the green grass and study. All of my years working hard paid off when I got to PSU. I had got to where I wanted to be. I felt happy. My real hope had come true. 1984 to 1991. I got my degree in psychology. My advice is to get a good education. I wanted to have my degree so I could get an excellent job. When I was a senior at PSU, I got my first AAC system. It was a Canon communicator. I moved into my own apartment my senior year at PSU. I wanted to keep my apartment tidy so that I wouldn't have to clean up big messes. My mom brought a white glove to my apartment to make sure it was clean. She said it's not clean enough. Clean this up. I also learned how to pay for electricity and other bills, and go grocery shopping. I didn't want to wait for support to come in, so I applied and got my apartment myself. I still live on my own. Jobs. I work because I want to have an income, to have money for fun, to go to work like everyone else, to contribute and help people. I love my job, it's something I look forward to. My special person. Dr. Sam Sinnott. I was invited to attend an 8-week workshop by Sam Sinnott about community education. I said I love this guy. I realized that working with people and communication is what I really wanted to do. My vocation. I wanted to work with Sam at the lab. I got hired in August of 2017. I'm a research assistant. I help my coworkers and Sam with projects, and I also have a program called Coffee Break. My list of ideas. Don't give up. You don't know how much a person can do. Help your children feel good about themselves. Help a child to think about their future. Ask if they want to work. Ask if they want help to figure out their goal. Ask if they like to help their friends and community. Ask if they want to be independent. Thank you for listening to my story. I'd love to talk to you about teaching kids with disabilities.
Thank you, Linda, for that great discussion of your life and the great questions that you ask. I like the way the last slide is ask, 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 ask. And now it's my turn. I am Dr. Aisha Musa, and this is my story, at least part of my story. I was declared dead before I even left the womb. My mother went into labor 3 months early, and they didn't detect a heartbeat, so they told my mother I was dead. I weighed 2 pounds, 11 and a half ounces, and when I was born, they wrapped me up and laid me aside with a death certificate waiting for the doctor's signature as the doctor attended my mother. I was born in a Catholic hospital, and the head nurse was Sister Camillus Elliott. And Sister Camillus was not on duty at the time, but heard what had happened, and she came to comfort my mother. And she saw my foot move and realized that I was not dead. So I credit Sister Camillus Elliott as the first person on earth to recognize my potential. She saw my foot move, she grabbed me. My mother described how she wrapped me in this large sleeve of the habit that she was wearing, and she rushed me to the preemie nursery calling for a doctor. So I have to honor her here as well, Sister Camillus Elliott, the first person on earth to recognize my potential. I was diagnosed with cerebral palsy at about 3.5 years old. I wasn't walking, and my mother had noticed I was not developing with my walking. And so my mother finally got me enrolled in Shriners Hospital at the age of 3.5. They diagnosed me with cerebral palsy, and they told my mother I would not likely live to adulthood and that I would never have a normal life. Fast forward to when I was 7 years old, Job Corpsman, my mother worked for Job Corps in Tongue Point, Oregon, the Tongue Point Job Corps in Astoria, Oregon, and the corpsman made me a walker when I was 7. I was denied entry to the Portland Public Schools. My mother enrolled me without telling the school that I was disabled. They didn't know I was disabled until I showed up with my walker and braces. It took them about 3 days to kick me out of school. At the time, we visited the Holiday Center for the Handicapped, and I don't remember anything about the school, but I will never forget my mother's reaction as we got into our car leaving the school, and it was a car similar to the one you see here. And I was sitting in the passenger seat, my little 7-year-old self, next to my mother. My mother turned to me and said, "You're not going to that school? I wouldn't send my pet pig to that school. You're going where you can get an education." We were Catholic at the time. We were members of St. Francis Parish in Southeast Portland. So my mother went to head priest at St. Francis and the principal at St. Francis. And this is a picture of the building that used to be St. Francis Elementary School. The church is still there. There is no longer a school attached to it. And my mother worked cooking breakfast and lunch in the school kitchen 5 days a week so that my brother and I could attend St. Francis Elementary School because my mother wanted to make sure I had a good education. And this was before the days of accessibility. So I would like crawl up the stairs and scooch down on my behind and things like that. And other students were assigned to help me, although I very seldom took help. I spent a lot of time at Shriners Hospital as a child. And I spent the first half of my sophomore year in high school, and we'll talk about where I went to high school in a moment, but I spent the first half of my sophomore year in Shriners Hospital. And the teacher there was amazing. I was reading Shakespeare at the time. She really encouraged me. We would read Shakespeare plays together and discuss them. And she encouraged me. She would bring me novels and other things that she thought I was interested in. I was quite the nerd at the time. I went to John Adams High School. And the reason I went to John Adams High School was it was the newest school in the system and the most accessible campus in the district. But I dropped out after my sophomore year because of an interaction primarily that I had with a teacher that was the last straw. I was taking a jewelry making class and our jewelry making instructor was absent and we had a substitute teacher who was an English teacher. And the substitute teacher did not know how to help me with the next step of my jewelry project. So he said, "Just read for the rest of the period." So I pulled out my grandmother's copy of Macbeth, which I was reading for about the 3rd time. And he said to me, "Oh, what class are you reading that for?" And I said, "It's not for a class, I'm just reading it." And this teacher looked at me like I had 2 heads. And he turned away, and that was the end of the conversation. He's like, "Oh," and turned away. And now, looking back on it, nearly half a century later, I can see that maybe a high school teacher might be surprised that a 15-year-old is reading Shakespeare because they like Shakespeare. But at the time, I was just insulted because this was an English teacher, and I had just come from an experience of a teacher that encouraged my love of literature. And it was at that point that I decided that I was in the wrong place. This was not the place for me. And at the time, Oregon allowed you to drop out of high school if you were 16, as long as your parents and the principal signed off on it, and they did. So I did my GED. instead of continuing high school where I felt I did not belong. Then I became a mom and a grandma. This is an important part of my life. And this is just me with pictures of me, of my children when they were young, and my daughter and her first child when he was a baby. And when my children were about the age you see in the top picture, when my daughter was about 9 and my son was about 3, I was encouraged by a friend to go back to school. My friend said, Aisha, not everyone should have a college degree, but you should have a college degree. My response to her was something you should never say to someone much older than you. I said, I'm too old to go back to school. And she told me I was looking out of the wrong end of the telescope, that this was the youngest I would ever be again. That blew my mind. And so I started looking into where I could go to school and what I wanted to do. And I did my Bachelor's of Art and my Master of Art in Teaching at PSU. And then I went on to get my PhD from Harvard. My BA and MAT were my BA was International Studies, specializing in the Middle East. My MAT was a Master of Art in Teaching with focus on Arabic and Applied Linguistics. And then I did my doctorate in Near Eastern Languages and Civilizations. So I love to tell people that I'm a high school dropout with a doctorate from Harvard. And the first person I thought of at Harvard when I arrived were the people in the public schools who denied me entry. If they had had their way, I wouldn't have even had an elementary education, let alone a bachelor's, a master's, and a PhD. And this is a picture of me in my Harvard robes at a Colgate graduation ceremony. I taught for a while at Colgate University. And this is a picture of me with my robes and my scooter at a graduation ceremony in about 2014. So that's a little bit about me, Dr. Aisha Musa. And now I will introduce to you our special guest speaker this evening, our friend and colleague, Sam Vranazan.
My name is Sam Vranazan. I am 33 years old and live in Portland, Oregon. I use an AAC device to communicate. AAC stands for Augmentative and Alternative Communication. Because of my experiences as a child, I am an advocate for everyone having access to AAC at an early age. Because of my life story, I consider myself an advocate for people who experience injustice. I had a difficult birth. The doctors and my parents were scared I would not survive. I did survive, but not without damage to my brain. I feel excited that I was born into a supportive family. I loved that they made me feel included and cared for. My mom made things easier for me growing up, even though I spent a lot of time at Shriners Hospital as a young kid because of my cerebral palsy. Even though surgery is not fun, I love Shriners and how they support kids like me. I went to Holiday Center for preschool and I was bored only talking about shapes and color. My parents found a general education school for me to attend after that. I loved being in school with my peers. In 7th grade I had a bad teacher who made me feel dumb and awful. She didn't think I could learn AAC, so she would not teach me how to use a communication device. I needed a teacher who would believe in me and teach me how to use AAC. Mara was a speech pathologist at Shriners Hospital. She believed in my abilities and recognized that I was getting bored in school by not being challenged. She offered to work with me weekly at Shriners for the school year, if I agreed to work hard. I worked hard and was rewarded with a trip to Bridge Camp in California. Mira attended camp with me and I met lots of AAC users there. Being with other AAC users made me want my own communication device. I kept working hard and finally got one. Coach Cameron invited me to join the high school wrestling team. He was so happy to have me and it made me feel proud to be included. He also made sure we all did our homework. The Catholic Church has been a part of my life since the beginning. I like the feeling of being a member of the church community, and I like hearing stories from the Bible. Doing outdoor activities with my friends and family is important to me. I first started skiing when I was in 5th grade. My family and different community organizations have helped me to stay involved with outdoor recreation. After high school, I went to the Community Transition Center and learned life skills like how to cook. Here I am using my communication device for a presentation in 2009 during my transition program. Since graduating from that program, I have continued to work hard every day. I have volunteered many places, helped start social groups, worked at PSU Design Lab, coached, and been a mentor. I am still actively looking for full-time employment. I will share some of my recent work. I have been on the Leadership Council for Building Communities through Alternative Communications Group. After high school, I started to help coach wrestling with Coach Cameron. I loved being a coach with the Jefferson wrestling team so much that it makes me cry to think about it. I hope after COVID I can go back to coaching again. I have been volunteering at the Oregon Zoo since 2015. I like being around the animals, like the elephants and the tigers. I feel excited to help kids learn about wildlife. I was able to present with ASL at a national conference in Minnesota. I shared how my Bluetooth switch access works. I helped Kim Elliott start a social group for people that use assistive technology. It is so good to get together with other AAC users to hang out and practice. This is a podcast I made about AAC community with my old friend and fellow AAC user, Endeavor. We interview other AAC users and people who offer supports to AAC users. I have been a member of the Advisory Council at the PSU Universal Design Lab, where we are developing projects to assist and empower people who are AAC users. Things like AAC socials and early childhood educational mentorship. This has been a great job and I have met many people. My support has helped give me opportunities and I want that for other people. I have been able to help be a mentor for school-aged AAC users through programs hosted by the PSU Design Lab. I feel proud to be a mentor and to help other AAC users. I felt supported and comfortable to just be myself. There was no pressure to use my device perfectly or say the right thing. I could just be a part of the group process. Process, not perfection. I think it is important for kids to see and be around other people with complex communication needs. When I was younger, I wish I had more people in my life who were like me. People who understand how I felt, so I didn't feel alone in my struggles. I am thankful I can be there for young students now. I have worked hard and stayed committed to my goals. I also know I have had a lot of help along the way to be successful. I feel loving support from my family. I have had consistent full-time staff for the last 3 years who understand me well. And I want to thank Bethany, my speech therapist, who has helped me so much with communication goals and learning how to send emails from my device. Thank you for listening to the story about my life. I met Linda at a conference and then she became my co-worker at the PSU Design Lab. I met Aisha through Linda. I am very thankful they invited me to present at this webinar. Please check out their website for more information about their goals and the grant that they received for this webinar. www.uplifting-and-empowering-disabled.net.
Thank you, Sam, for sharing your excellent story with us. My key takeaways, what I see in all of our stories, is that supportive families and communities are critical in the recognizing and encouraging of potential. Education is critical, and proper equipment is critical. What are some takeaways that you want to add?
Sam had something to add.
Activity drinks.
Okay.
We need to get you.
Go back.
I often felt dumb in school. One of my earliest memories of feeling this way goes all the way back to preschool when I was only 3 years old. I think it is so important for people to know that helping children with special needs be successful in school and in life is a big and important job. Just because we learn differently doesn't mean we can't learn.
One of the things that I think that you're talking about, Sam, when you talk about how important the role is for the people who teach children with complex communication needs, that role deserves more respect than it gets because it's a role that enables human potential. Linda, did you have any takeaways that you wanted to add? You'd like people to listen to us?
Yeah.
And what? As a person. Repeat that. Not as an object? I understand now what you said, right? I didn't understand what I heard at first, but when I asked you to repeat it, you repeated yourself. I listened carefully and I understood and I confirmed with you. And that's the same thing they teach in active listening for people who don't have special communication needs. That's simply an active listening skill. So again, what we're doing is the same type of thing that everyone does. We're just doing it slightly differently because listening, active listening usually is about paying attention to the content of what someone is saying. I'm doing the same thing with you, but it's not that my mind is wandering and I'm ignoring you, which is what active listening for most people is focused on. But my focus when I'm actively listening to you, and if I don't understand, asking for clarification, is related more to the physical articulation of sound. There is a difference there, but the active listening skill, again, is a skill that everybody develops. And I love this because it shows everybody that what we're asking of the non-disabled world in a social model of disability is to do exactly the same things with us and treat us as disabled people in exactly the same way that they treat other people. Listen carefully. If you don't understand, ask, right? Make that clear. But it starts from a mindset that you have something important to communicate that I need to understand. And that gets back to what you just said, Linda, of CSS people don't see us as objects.
Yeah.
If everyone is looking at the other person as a person first, which is what we already said, as a person first and as disabled second, then that raises the level of respect for the individual human being.
Right.
And because implicit bias is an unconscious thing. It's not that people look at us consciously and think, I disrespect that individual because they're disabled. But in the subconscious part of their brain, they're expecting less of us. They're not expecting that we have something valuable to say. That's not as much a problem for someone like me with a mobility impairment today as it was 50 years ago when we were little, Linda, when you and I were young, because back then they just assumed if you were disabled, you were dull or retarded or any of the terms that they used then, regardless of what your disability was. And I think people with complex communication needs still face that stigma. People don't see a wheelchair now and automatically assume that I have nothing in my brain, which is what they were assuming when I was a small child and why they didn't let us in school. They figured there was no need to teach us anything because, you know, we were just less than full people. They don't assume that about me anymore. And I don't think that's just because, you know, I went to school and did all the things I did. It's that our whole society has shifted and wheelchairs and mobility impairments are no longer looked at in that way. People encounter people with communication needs, they assume somewhere in their mind, whether it's conscious or not, that your communication challenges are caused by cognitive issues and not physical issues, because they don't think about all of the physical things that are required in speech, right? But if you think about it, your speech requires all kinds of very fine muscle movements. I mean, the way letters are formed when we make sounds have very specific descriptions of exactly where your tongue is in relation to your teeth, and, you know, and the way your lips move. All of that is very fine muscle control. And so there's so much physical going on with speech, and that's not necessarily something that most people understand. So I think that people who use AAC face much more stigma and discrimination than people who use wheelchairs or crutches or walkers, or even blind or deaf people, right? But because the communication is the key, and that's why thinking about pencils and paper as communication devices, and nobody questions that every child needs a communication device in kindergarten because everybody gives them paper and pencils, right? But when they look at a communication device like you use, Sam, or you, Linda, and they look at the little kids and they think, wow, you know, why would they need that? Yet every other child gets a communication device, no questions asked. So again, we're challenging mindset here with this webinar series. What we're asking people to say, these people are like me. I, like these people, receive services all the time. I, like these people, need the right equipment and tools and support so that I can maximize my potential. Because literally, there is no such thing as a self-made person. Everybody depended on their parents when they were children. Everybody had to have teachers in school. Everybody had to learn how to do whatever they are doing. Everybody has to have the right equipment and tools to do whatever they do, right? So it's that support, that education and training and equipment and tools that enable them to reach their potential. We want society more broadly to start to look at us the same way. That the mobility equipment that Aisha Musa needs to be successful.
Awful do I feel hurt.
So Sam said,
Awful do I feel hurt.
and you're saying that you feel hurt, that that's the reality and it's awful? Yeah.
That you are not heard.
No, that it hurts him. It bothers him. Hurt. And it's awful. The things you're talking about, that's the reality.
The fact that people don't see us as people, is that what you're talking about, Sam? That hurts you personally because people focus on the impairment? Is that what you mean?
Yes.
I hear you, Sam. It's very painful. And all we're asking is for people to look at us as human beings first and think about the ways in which we can be enabled.
Through a supportive family and community, and through having the equipment and the tools and the training we need to realize whatever degree of our own potential that we have the ambition and energy and desire to achieve. What we want people to take away from this is not just the specific examples of Linda and Aisha and Sam Branazan. The larger lesson we want people to take from this is that when a person who has complex mobility needs or communication needs, whatever their diagnosis, whatever their needs, if they're provided with the equipment and training they need to succeed, then they will go as far as their own individual motivations and ambitions will take them. In thinking even more about the overarching theme of this webinar series, recognizing and encouraging potential, identifying and mitigating barriers. The other thing is, in addition to mitigating barriers, what is it that we can do to enable people? And the term enabling often has a negative thing because people talk about enabling addicts, enabling behavior. But what is it that enables in a positive sense, in the sense that it allows people to do what they need to do or want to do? The mentality of the system, it's like they're doing you a huge favor for which you should be grateful. They're not thinking of it as, how can we enable this person to make their maximum contribution in society? I see that as a very different mindset, which is where we go back to what interests you, what skills do you have? What skills and interests do you have, and what are you going to contribute based on the skills that you have? Where can you contribute, and what do you need to enable you to make that contribution? And that is a major shift in mindset that has not yet occurred. If you give us the equipment and training and support that we need, we will do things with it. Right? The next thing is discovering potential and ambitions, questions for ourselves and others. And here, Linda, I would like to go back and revisit the questions that you asked in the last frame of your story about imagining a future, helping your disabled children to imagine their future and those questions that you ask.
Help a child to think about their future. Ask if they want to work. Ask if they want help to figure out their goal. Ask if they like to help their friends and community. Ask if they want to be independent.
These questions are a great beginning for families to start thinking about their children with disabilities. But we also want people with disabilities to think about their future very concretely as well. So we have a specific activity for people to do at home.
An activity for motivation and ambition. And so this is something we're going to ask people to do at home. List 3 things that excite you and 3 reasons for each thing why it excites you. Then list 3 things that frustrate you and 3 reasons each thing is frustrating. And then list 3 things you like to do and the reasons you like to do them, and 3 things that you hate to do and the reasons you hate to do them. Because by asking these kinds of questions, people can determine the kinds of things that they might like to do in life as a career or just for fun. Because when we understand why we like what we do and why we don't like something, then we can figure out the things that we want to do.
Yeah.
As a disabled person, a lot of times the things that I don't like to do because I don't have the proper equipment, right? If I had the proper equipment to do something, I might like it a lot better. This is where the supportive community comes in, because it's the supportive community that helps to create the devices and tools that we need to do the things that we want to do. And when we don't have the right tools, it makes things more difficult. And often we avoid doing things because they're difficult.
Yeah.
But when we have the proper equipment, we may like things. So that's why it's really important to ask these questions about why it is we like something and why it is we don't like it, especially when it has to do with doing something.
This activity provides a starting point for determining motivations and ambitions. Once you have an idea of what your motivations and ambitions are, you can start to think of ways to make them a reality. And we'll cover more of that in our next webinar. Thank you for joining us. To learn more about our upcoming webinars in the series, visit our website at www.uplifting-and-empowering.net.